One of the most important aspects of Spanish 102 is the preterite tense, or the preterite aspect of the past tense. Um, there are actually two ways of expressing the past in Spanish. One of them is what we call the preterite. Let's take a look at the preterite. So in Spanish there are two ways of expressing the past, the preterite and the imperfect. The preterite is used to express past actions that are seen as completed as opposed to ongoing. An example of a completed action would be he studied last night. An example of an ongoing action in the past would be he was studying last night when. Below you will find conjugations for the preterite. So the preterite has its own complete set of conjugations. It's got its own irregulars and everything. So these are the regular conjugations in the preterite. So for AR verbs, haste, o, amos, aron. And if it's an ER or an IR verb, iste, io, imos, and ieron. Okay, so that's an important table. You will be expected to know that and use it with verbs. Okay, and we'll take a look at some examples here in just a sec. While we're here though, if I had a verb, let's say hablar, which is to speak or to talk, hablar, if I wanted to say I spoke, I would say yo hablé. Or you spoke would be tú hablaste. Or he or she habló. We spoke would be hablamos, which is a little tricky because hablamos is the same in the present as it is for the preterite. The way we distinguish between the present and the preterite is that we look at the context of the sentence that it's used in. Okay, and then finally we would end up with hablaron for you guys or they spoke. Okay, same thing with ER and IR verbs. If I had a verb such as comer, if I wanted to say I ate, I would say yo comí. Tú comiste would be you ate. Él or ella comió, he or she ate. Nosotros comimos, we ate. And then finally, ustedes, ellos, or ellas comieron. Okay, so those are the regular forms of the preterite tense. Some exceptions. AR and ER verbs do not have a stem change in the preterite. So the general rule is that verbs don't get stem changes in the preterite. The exception is that there are some IR verbs that still have a change, but only in the usted and ustedes conjugations. Okay, the only two changes are E to I and O to U. For example, if we're going to use the verb servir, we would say usted sirvió, or ustedes, for the verb dormir, would be durmieron. So there we have an E to I stem change and an O to U. Okay, and again, these are only in the third person, usted and the ustedes conjugations. Okay. If the verb ends in car, gar, or zar, then the yo forms will change slightly to preserve a sound. For example, buscar, in order to preserve the hard K sound, we would end up with yo busqué. The C had to change to a QU in order to preserve the hard K sound. Llegar, yo llegué. The G had to be accompanied by a U in order to preserve the hard G sound. Otherwise, the G would make a soft, kind of an H sound. If we have a G followed by an E, then the G makes an H sound. Empezar, Z changes to C. Verbs that have a vowel at the end of their stem might have a slight change in the usted or ustedes conjugation. So creer ends in its stem ends in an E. Leer, its stem ends in an E. And oír, its stem would just be an O. In these cases, oftentimes a Y will be added. So we have usted creyó, ustedes creyeron, usted leyó, ustedes leyeron, usted oyó, ustedes oyeron. Okay, so the I being replaced by a Y there. There are some words commonly used in the preterite conjugation that indicate the past tense. So anoche is last night. Oftentimes you'll have a verb conjugated in the past or the preterite aspect of the past. Anteayer, ayer, de repente, el año pasado, la semana pasada, and una vez, or ya. All words that inherently indicate something in the past tense. So some examples with all of these. Ayer yo visité a mi abuela. So yesterday I visited my grandma. Or anoche ella durmió muy bien. So last night she slept very well. So there we have the word anoche, one of our words commonly used in conjunction with the past tense. We had the verb dormir, which is one of our IR stem changers, one of the exceptions to the rule. So it does get an O to U stem change, durmió. The next one, ellos bailaron toda la noche. They danced all night. Él comió toda la noche. He ate, or él comió toda la comida. He ate all the food. Okay? So, the preterite aspect of the past tense expresses completed actions. We talked about when to use them, their different verb forms, and we mentioned the exceptions. Again, exceptions are few and far between. The general rule is that there are no stem changes in the preterite tense. Okay, so study those. We'll use them in class, and I'm sure they'll be on the homework.